Hey guys, how's it going? Jovan, Hutton, Pulitzer here. Saying hi, good morning. It's actually a nice, sunny, beautiful morning where I am. Give me a shout out. You'll see me kind of looking at my screen here as I try to do this. I try to look at you directly as I do it. Sometimes it's kind of hard looking at the comments at the same time, but I just wanted to say hi to everybody. And let's just kind of do an update, right? I'd like to fill you in on a few things. Tell me where you're joining from. Say hey. We got people from all around the world, etc. And I try to keep up with this comment. Somebody told me I could actually slow the comments. I haven't found out how to do that yet, right? But I'll do it. This is a history lesson. Now, trust me, it's relevant, and that's why I'm sharing it, right? I'm sharing it because I just want people to remember that history does, in fact, repeat itself. It's just kind of the way it is. And I've always said that history is absolutely the best teacher, right? Sometimes we forget that. I'm going to open a new tab here. Hang on one second. Sometimes we forget that in many ways we've been here, we've done this before, and the question is, and maybe that's what is the sickness and or free will issue that's mankind. But it's the fact that, does man ever learn, right? Does man ever really learn from our mistakes or what we do? And one of the ways to attempt to understand that is to just try to go back and take a look at history and see what did we learn and how did it come out for all of us, right? Yeah, I have tattoos. Yeah, let's see. I'll show you my tattoos I've got. And so I've got my Hebrew tattoo here, right? This is Hebrew, Yod Ve Vav Ve, which is basically what's on King Solomon's ring for wisdom. It was supposedly on the Ten Commandments. It's when Moses talked to the burning bush and he asked God, who should I say you are? And God said, I am, right? Now this is on me for two reasons, right? This is the appropriate way to see it. When I screw with people's heads and somebody look at me like I'm a tattooed fiend, I go, well, the small marks is for everybody I've killed, and the big marks are for when I've done it with more 2-3 people at a time, and I just mess with them. No, it's Hebrew. Yod Ve Vav Ve, right? Is just an easy way to say it. Now, the reason I did that, I had no tattoos that were visible like this, right? And at 36 years old, if those people know my story, after 9/11 and capital markets dried up and God brought me to my stomach, flat to my stomach, not to my knees, I did a lot of soul searching. Now, in Judaism, if you write the name of God down, even on a piece of paper. And so that's why sometimes in Judaism, you'll see big G dash D. It's referencing God, but it's not spelling God. And there's a reason for that. If you literally write God's name on a piece of paper, right, then you can never, ever, ever throw that piece of paper away. It is a sin because you are technically trashing, destroying the name of God. And so some of the most incredible history we have throughout history comes from these storage rooms to store documents where God's name was written or invoked on them, and they can never be trashed. And that's how a lot of incredible history is rediscovered. There you go. And for me, I had a spiritual crisis moment when when everybody back then was trying to be $1 billion public company and go public, right? Hey, from Puerto Rico. And I had managed with my company and team, we built $1 billion company and we were still private, about to go public. I won't go off into that story, but the .com crash didn't make our IPO. And then of course, the world capital markets are drying up, and then boom, Tower 2 went down with all the people that potentially I could have attempted to save our company with, or all the bankers and stuff talking. It just wasn't possible because they vaporized in Tower 2. And so I had, yeah, Sarah, I'm getting my rabbi on, right? But I had to do some soul searching. I had a crisis, and the crisis was literally, God, if you gave me all this talent and I can do these great things because of the mind you gave me, what the hell went wrong, right? Why did it go down? Now you have to understand, I speak those things very carefully because I had done an interview way back then, and I made the comment to a reporter, something I truly believe, but they weaponized the quote against me after the company went down. But what they weaponized against me is I said, I feel God loves me twice. That was my statement. I feel God loves me twice. I still do, by the way, right? And I'll never take that back. But what I meant by that is God gave me talents. So I believe God blessed me with the ability to see, to understand, to discern, to create things. That's one talent. But then again, there are very hold on. I got to tell somebody bye-bye. You got to bear with me. Well, I just don't like that. Anyway, and so there are many, many, many educated people that never use their talents. And so what I said was, I believe that God loves me twice because God gave me the ability to use my talents. So you can have talents and not use them. You can have talents and be afraid of them. But I think it's a second blessing to be able to have talents and whatever. And Liberty says, and Liberty, that's a good point. You can censor your viewers. Absolutely. When somebody makes a misstatement, a totally false statement like that, saying I voted for Democrats and all this other stuff and caps and yelling or whatever, yeah, I do it. Why do I do that? Because I want to focus on what the lesson is and try to stay on lesson. Just like right now, the lesson is not about censoring my viewers. I also want you to understand that my viewers are voluntary. I don't control the platform. You're here voluntarily. So when you click that button, you volunteered to come into my house here. I don't control the system. And we're going to talk about that. And I welcome you here, Liberty. Anyway, so that's what I made a statement. It was weaponized against me. So that's what this particular tattoo is. And this particular tattoo is, some people say Celtic in origin. It's a repeating prophecy. And as you see, everything repeats in threes. I've got Om on the back of my shoulder. I've got my team icon here. I've got a meat tag on my back, right? A meat tag is your name and information in case something happens to you, get blown up if you're wearing a flat jacket or whatever the case may be, because it's only kind of your center torso less, so that's it. And so yes, I have tattoos. But here's why I did the tattoo, and I'm going to explain it to you. I did this tattoo because in Judaism, if you write the name of God down, you cannot throw it away. And if I learned anything during my rise and fall in that particular one, hey, Fiona, how you doing? I hope Sophia's doing great, and I hope you got your move done. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. But here's what this means. And this is important because it'll help you understand the struggle I struggle with, because everybody struggles with things. If you understand the history of tattoos, monks would tattoo them over their heart, and it was to basically fill the voids or strengthen things that they need to strengthen in their life, because you're permanently marking your body. I had this discussion with a girl one day who had an Asian tattoo on the back of her neck, real frail kind of whatever girl, and she had a cool tattoo, and I said, hey, tell me about your tattoo. I knew what it was. Tell me about your tattoo. And she proceeded to tell me that it's for fearless, tattoo fearless. And I said, well, I want you to understand, what's tattooed on you is not fearless. It's the word fear. Fear. And tattoos imbue things in you. And you might want to go get that one checked out, right? Because it was fear that was written on her, and it was actually manifested in your body. And yes, Amy, a seal upon your heart, right? And so here it is. Ready? All those gifts, when you shut down offices, and you have offices in Hong Kong and London and Los Angeles and New York City and Dallas, and you're responsible for all these lives and the families, and you have to go through the absolutely horrible experience of laying off people that you love and you care for and you're responsible for their families that believed in your dream. It's a very soul-crushing experience. And so I ended up, you can listen to this on my SoundCloud, find me on SoundCloud, I'll tell the whole story. I ended up with a 38 in my mouth. Not going to get into that. You can listen to it. But I did this because it's a sin to throw God's name away. And this is on my body because to remind me, do not fail God and the gifts he gave me. Do not throw it away. And that's why this is here. To remind me every day when I see it, that God gave me talents, that God gave me the discernment and ability to understand those talents. And God basically gave me skills. Hey, Susan Osborne, I don't know if that's meant for me. I'm not a Mormon. I swear I'm not a Mormon. I'm telling you, I'm a Jew. Anyway, that's my story. And my story, I look at that every day to remind me, do not throw it away. So let's have our history lesson for the day, shall we? Because we have so many incredibly wonderful, beautiful people here, right? And I just want to share you these things. And I want to share you a history lesson because I think it's very important to understand what we're going through. And I'll tell you totally like it is. It's not fun having security around you, right? It's not fun sometimes having your life inconvenienced with security. And last night I am literally loading a particular type of shotgun. And this particular thing is designed a certain way. This is my personal one. And it's so if anybody breaches, the first shot is a flash grenade. So it actually takes out everybody's eyesight. The second shot is basically a sizzling magnesium that will penetrate the skin, and then it starts burning because it's on fire when it comes out. And then you do a scatter shot, and a scatter shot is to hook like hell they leave, and then you have one that's just going to take them out and knock them down. But you always have to if you ever get to a point they have somebody in your home, you do have to prove you did your best not to have to use lethal force, and you hope maybe in the first one they're gone. So I'm loading this up and my family's looking at me. And I said, you know, it's interesting. People have been here throughout time. We're just a generation that is experiencing one of those times. You know, my mother went through it in World War II, and yeah, because most of you know I'm first generation American. I'm German, and so it kind of hit home for me about what my family went through, and so that's what I want to talk to you today. And I'm sorry I tell you so many stories, but it's just kind of the way I do it, and maybe you get something out of it, maybe you don't. That's, I hope. But you're ready. You are therapy for me. One of the reasons I can do this and I do what I do is because I have you, and I can share this with you. And as I share, just my transparency helps me get it out, helps me cope with responsibility. It is very hard to see the headlines calling me the man that will save America. That's a very I don't want to say hard, it's a very heavy responsibility. I welcome it totally, but it's a very heavy responsibility, right? And I don't want to ever let down anybody. So let's get on to this, okay? So ready? Oh, hey, Tammy says we're there. Where'd you go? Hang on. Tammy says you're therapy for us. We just want the truth. I think anybody just wants the truth. Okay, here we go. Ready? People are begging me to get over it. So here you go. Damn it. Hang on. I'm trying to do. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go to my first screen. This is a statement made 70 years ago, not to the day, just 70 years ago. And that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to share my screen. And it is right here. Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down a path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear. That was a special message to Congress on internal security of the United States, August 8th, 1950, by Harry S. Truman. Now, I snagged that comment because I thought, wow, that's great, right? And that comment was posted a few hours back by General Flynn. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And it made me think about what I wanted to talk about, because you're right, it's a profound quote. Very much, it's a profound quote. And I wanted to put it into perspective, because in reality, the world, now I'm going to say this is the world, but because we're part of the world, we've been here too, but we've been through this before. Now I'm going to go back to Liberty, whatever her name was earlier, that said I was censoring my person, because when he did all caps and did that and I booted it. And let me tell you why. There's a big difference, and here's the difference. I don't control this platform, you do. Think about that. I don't control this platform, you do. You're here because you chose to be here, not because I am the only platform and you can only make this happen and this technology to engage through people through me. I'm not that. I'm just one tiny little doorway to a house in a very big system. And so, yes, in my house, I have rules. I have rules. And the simple rules are don't cuss and yell, right? Be polite, but I deemed that not okay. And so you lost access to my house, but you didn't lose access to the system. And so what we're seeing here is a really interesting time in history where history is in fact repeating itself. Now, This happened many, many, many times. If you want to read a very interesting story, uh, Josephus Flavius, which was he was a Jew, a historian, and he became the Flavius part when he basically decided to partner with the Roman Empire. And most of you that know me follow out time, you know I collect all his works and have them all back through time and every different ones that's been published, really rare ones. We talked about them, I've shown you before, right? And Flavius, Josephus, writes about what the Jews had to go through. Now, one of the Jewish stands, which you can see, is Masada, and it's a really interesting story if you wanted to read it. But the Jews basically had this top fortress on a flat top, and they were able to hold off the Romans because the Romans wanted to basically control everything about him and about the Jews, and eradicate their religion, eradicate their beliefs, eradicate their trading. And so they finally just to push them to Masada. And the Romans eventually made it. You can still see it today. If you look on Google Earth, just put Masada, M-A-S-A-D-A, Masada, and you can look back in the ancient lands, and they piled Roman rubble to build this road right up the side of a cliff. Literally, they built a ramp to march straight up this cliff way up here. And most of the people of Masada basically committed suicide, or the people of Masada committed suicide in order to not be under the Roman rule and accept the Roman way of life. So this has happened many, many, many times when you think about how do you integrate, how do you take over, how do you dominate a society. One of the more recent ones in time was Genghis Khan. That's why a third of the people basically share a common DNA gene with Genghis Khan. Most people don't know that. Now, what Genghis Khan did is, although he was a conqueror, he was an open conqueror. And here's what I mean. He did not require you to change your religion. He didn't care. He did not require you to not say certain words, right? He didn't outlaw words or whatever the case may be. What Genghis Khan did is open up what we now know as the Silk Road and the trading route. And as he came in to conquer a city, town, whatever you want to call it, he would always send out emissaries and say, hey, look, I'm coming, and here are my rules. And if you agree to my rules, great. If you don't agree to my rules, I'll kill every freaking one of you, etc. And what Genghis Khan did in history, you know, not 100% horrible as some, but still repressive, is he'd come in, and if they agreed and capitulated to his demands, the men became part of his great horde, armies. And Genghis Khan personally spent enough time in town to have sex with every woman that he could of childbearing age. And the reason he did that is, in his particular way of life, is he reasons that the mother wouldn't kill their own children, and he wanted to give them a stake in him, and therefore that's how he basically did this conquering. It was, now his only thing was kind of relatively simple. He says, I'm the army, you're my people. You can still have all your gods and do whatever you want. It's just, I'm going to take X% of everything you do in income, and you're going to pay that to me, and you're going to give men to me for my army, and I will always be your army and protect you, but that's the rule. If you don't take the protection, you die. And so that's how Genghis Khan did his conquering. So he used a little different technique. Then, important to my life is, you know, I have great grandparents that died in the ghetto in Germany. My grandmother was one of the first 7 German citizens allowed to come into the United States. She didn't come with my mother. She left my mother behind in Germany, but was allowed to come to the United States. And so that's why this is really, really, really close to me. And so that's my main point today, is to say, history does repeat itself. If you don't teach people history, they don't understand cause and effect, right? And I think this is one of the top reasons why history is no longer taught in schools. Sorry, it's already cold. That if you don't understand history, then you can be fooled into thinking you're on the right side of history because you don't know history. Does that make sense to you? And so I'll give you an example. Back in the year 435, and I won't get into the theology of it, but Constantine the Great, in Constantinople, which is in modern Turkey, he had moved the Holy Roman Church from Rome to Constantinople. He didn't like the way Rome was doing it, and he thought Rome was way too corrupt for his liking, but he was the emperor. And so he moved everything to Constantinople. You know this as Hagia Sophia, which after all this time, only a month ago, 2 months ago, reverted back 100% to a mosque. Anyway, what he did was he moved everything there so he could clean up the system. And he was faced with a crisis that there were predominantly two types of people. There were pagans, right, which the church has forever taught you was people that were devil worshipers. And then there were the people of the word. Now, people of the word are what you know today as Christians. Okay, so there were pagans and there were people of the word. So you could call it idolaters and you could call it Christians, whatever you want to call it. And his society is ripping itself apart. This great city is experiencing at times a couple of thousand murders a day, every single day, okay? And that's how the city's society was ripping itself apart. And so Constantine had to come up with a way to try to save, quote unquote, the cities and save the people and thus save his taxation base. And what happened then was they made the Great Compromise. And that's how we get a lot of things we have in society today, like church on Sunday versus the Sabbath, which is, Friday evening to Saturday evening. Many things happened in the Council of Nicaea. That's when women were kind of removed from the Bible. A lot of different things happened, but he was trying to get control of a society and they had to make certain things. Now, the reason I tell you this story, because one of the most important things that happened was you have to understand the Sabbath backwards in context. They didn't have convenience stores. They didn't have Easy Marts or Amazon or anything like that. And so that day was the day you, quote unquote, came to town because everybody else didn't come to town. Hold on. I am disappointed in your participation in spreading lies and conspiracies. You have many followers who supported not accepting the overwhelming 81 American votes for President Biden as you advocated. You share responsibility in insurrection against damage people to a Capitol. Please right your wrong with your followers and stop spreading hate and lies. Dennis, you haven't followed me very long, have you? I have never said go vote for Biden or anything like that. You might have me confused with somebody else, right? But again, this is not about political preferences. This is just a history lesson. And so on when you would come in with no grocery stores, no Amazon or whatever. So everything was conducted in that day. Men went to temple, and women did the trading and provisions, and you paid your taxes and stuff. It was all kind of done in that one transaction, right? That one transaction. And in that transaction, all of society, what we would know today, anywhere from our tax office to our grocery stores to our DMVs that we go to, all this other stuff that was going on, that would be done in the one day. And so a very, very simple thing happened in history to try to identify people that were, because Constantine forced a brand new religion, he had to try to identify people to this new religion. And the way they did it was basically moving those trading and taxation days to another day versus this day. And that way, if you wanted to continue to do commerce, and you wanted to continue to buy things, and you wanted to continue to sell things, and you wanted to continue to support your family, you had to do it this way. And it had to be a visual way of doing it so the authorities could know that you accepted it. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, is because I think we kind of see it going on right now. Meaning, we're seeing people get demonetized if you are labeled conservative. Meaning, if you have a podcast or something that's deemed conservative and somebody doesn't like it, then what happens is you can get demonetized, meaning PayPal will cut you off and not let you collect any money, or YouTube will cut you off and not let you get any advertising. They won't let you transact. I've been reading things about the President Trump, the administration. And the thing I was reading about the administration is, all social media, basically the social media booted them on Twitter and booted them on Facebook and booted them here. And I think the one I heard this morning was even his mailing list company. Now think about this. This presidency works to have this massive list of people they communicate with. And even now the mailing list company has refused to let the president basically message his followers, even in email. And so the point why I bring this up is because you are right in the throes of a vortex of history 100% repeating itself. And if you don't know history, you may, number one, feel that it's justified and should be done. I in no way, and I've been ridiculed for this. I had an academic get online and call me a Nazi, not only because I was German, forgetting I'm a Jewish German, but because I said even if there was a statue of Hitler, I would not tear down that statue. And the reason I said that is because as a historian, I know that if you eradicate that story from the books and you make the Nazi Nationalist Socialist Party go away and you don't tell the story of the National Socialist Party and what the socialists did in the name of correcting society, if you don't know that story, then history is doomed to repeat itself. And so I take flack for that because I truly believe in open society that you have to basically understand everything. It's even true in forensics. The incredible breakthrough in forensic investigations was to interview and give a voice to the serial killers. And what helped investigations accelerate along was that, and I think it's called Mindhunter, and you should watch it on Netflix. Incredible series. They only did 2 seasons. I wish they would have done more. But it tells the histories of forensic science and them going in, talking to some of the most horrible serial killers in the world to find out why they did it. Now, it was those breakthroughs and that openness of exchange, not going, you're a killer, horrible, horrible, but just listening to their story, enabled the system to understand, why do people do that? What gets them there? What turns them there? What triggers them? And how do they think? And it was that openness that allowed the system to understand. And when censoring occurs, you cannot understand why the opposite side does what it does. And if you're not willing to understand, you can't build a bridge to finding at least a little bit of common ground. And we've learned this from history. You cannot hide things. You must shine a light on things. You must let history speak for itself. You must let facts speak for itself. And the system must refrain from shaping or only adopting one form of the narrative. And if you don't believe that way, you're an idiot, therefore you don't count. Because if you shape the narrative, a couple of things happen. Later on in history, it's not as clear as a picture and it's muddled. But when the shaping of the narrative is happening, you are actually hurting the populace and leading them down a dangerous path. So I'm going to now get to my last story, I promise. So we have a sample of this. And we know how things like this end when, and Amanda, thank you for that. You're right. That's all this is about, people. If you don't understand my hashtag, you've never seen it before. If you have sensitive ears, close your ears. O-Y-F-E, Ofe. It's almost like the Jewish saying, but in my saying, it's open your fucking eyes, because that is all this is about. Open your eyes, understand. And it's all about history. This is not about party. This is not about presidents. This is not about who chooses who you voted for, or any of that. That is over. That is over. This is about you as a citizen, as an individual. Will your vote ever matter? Because if your vote doesn't matter, you have no say. So let's talk about that. And let's see if we can find our common ground. Here's our common ground. Do you believe, right? Do you believe that right now going on in the United States of America, that people in the middle of history are being shut off and silenced? Do you believe that's happening? My answer is yes. Anytime there is a body, but not a governing body, but an access body that controls an entire platform or system, and they deem what you say I don't like, something's kind of wrong. I can't reconcile how somebody that basically says, I love America, or, and this is not me, I'm just giving an example. I love America, I think the government's corrupt, I love President Trump, all these different things can be said. They can be deplatformed, while on the same platform, there can be pages and text about the best way to have sex with children, small children. I don't understand that. And I don't understand how somebody can sit in judgment and pass that judgment to say, well, this one's okay and this one isn't, because in reality, you have to have everything in there. So let's jump forward, because I think we can all agree, regardless of the side you're on, I think we can all agree that right now you are seeing in real time the censoring of people for expressing their beliefs. That's just a true fact, right? And in censoring people's beliefs, what's happening is you end up pushing one agenda that you happen to believe with, which basically means you are telling the people what they should believe. And when you have any side of the aisle saying, I don't like what you believe, and now you shouldn't be a senator, we need to get rid of you. Well, this has happened in history. And you might be surprised when and how it happened, and you might be surprised how it did it, but I'm just going to read from you a little bit of website. But you're right, your voice in this society is your vote. Your voice in talking to other people to attempt to find common ground. See, I think social media is to try to find common ground. That's why I try to be transparent. But it's common ground. But you got to understand how history teaches us. Like there are countries in the Middle East that basically say they have two laws on the books. One law says a woman cannot be a doctor. Okay, that's their law. But there's a second law that goes to it that says if you're a man, you must see a male doctor. And if you're a woman, you must see a female doctor. Do you see what just happened there? It's illegal for a woman to become a doctor, and a woman can't see a doctor unless it's a woman. So sometimes laws can be incredibly suppressive, and the woman doesn't get doctors. Think about that. Now, somebody thought they were doing right. So let's go back in time and let's talk about censoring of the press. Let's talk about shutting down voices that don't agree with you. Let's talk about when was the last time in history this affected a large group of people to where we know that, okay, if you don't say what we say and you don't like what we like, we're going to do a few things. We're going to cancel you and put you out of business. And if you want to stay in business and you want to trade and do commerce, then you must do it our way. It's approved by us, or you lose it. Here we go, folks. Interesting ride. Let's go. First I want to go here. Hang on. Go look at the Gateway Pundit, or it's even on my wall. There's an audio interview that I did, and it's me telling an interesting story about my experience with Sean Hannity's producer. Now, you know, Gateway Pundit is the one that labeled me the man who can save America, but there's 12 minutes of an interview. And they didn't write it. You can hear it. You can hear me tell this interesting story. So you might want to find that on my wall. I'm going to close that down just so I don't go to the wrong one. Okay. And so now I'm going to go back to my screen here, and I'm going to share you. And we're just going to read together, folks, because I just want you to know these are not my words. This is the Holocaust Encyclopedia, and this is the press in the Third Reich. This is the Nazis. Right? Most people don't understand Nazis was the socialist movement. Now, what's most important here is when Adolf Hitler took power in 1933, the Nazis themselves, they controlled less than 3% of Germany's newspaper. Now, that's very important. 4,700 newspapers. I'm just going to equate that to our online community, our television, you know, news broadcast, the way we have media today. But back then it was really only newspapers and radio, but radio at that time was government controlled. So just newspapers, 4,700 independent newspapers or newspaper bodies for the country. And the Nazis, the Socialist Party, controlled 3% of them. So what would 3% be, right? So 10% is 470, right? And so they controlled about 100 and 130, let's just shits and giggles. My math's not correct, but just kind of call it that. So 130 out of 4,700 was their voice. And they made a move to come into power. Let's go back to this story. And so in this, you have to understand what happened is when Germany eliminated the multi-party political system. Now, this is key. This means all the maneuvers were taken to eradicate multiple parties and multiple voices and consolidate them into one party, okay? And this means they had to exercise control over the people. And so what happened is the newspapers that were produced by what they deemed outlaw, what they deemed rebel rousing, what they deemed against their belief, what they deemed would hurt people and cause violence, meaning their competitors, they got rid of. There it is right there. And so during the first weeks, okay, during the first weeks of 1933, the Nazi regime deployed radio, press, and newsreels, meaning they put out news, they put out propaganda that was specifically designed to make people think the system was failing them and that the communists were going to take over and your way of life was going to be gone if you did not accept what the Nazi party was. And the way they did this is they basically took to the streets, right, with their stormtroopers, and they basically kind of paramilitary. They had gear, they had batons, they had guns, they had uniforms, you know. Think like if you put everybody in black or bandanas and pepper spray and bottles and stuff, and they put them onto the street and they basically said, destroy everything. Because we have to tell people they have to do it our way or they're not. And this is, in history, this is what's called the Aryanization of a nation, okay? In this, in their term of being racially pure, was a way to ostracize a class of people. Now, this is important, especially relates directly to me, is in that particular scenario, you had to wear an armband if you were a Jew. You had to, some of you seen some of my historic family members paintings in, you know, and only Jews could be doctors because Christians couldn't touch dead bodies, and only Jews could be bankers because if you were Christian, you couldn't serve and whatever. That came way back. But if you were a Jew, you had to mark yourself. And so you had to start wearing this. And then they basically started marking your stores. And they basically deemed, I don't like the way you think. I don't like the way you talk. I don't like what you believe in. And you don't believe like us. And so you're not one of us. And so basically what they did is they made it where Jews cannot transact, can't live, can't buy, right? And we've been here. We've been here before, right? Open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes. And so let's continue with my reading here of this. And I'm going to jump through. And so basically what they did is they wrote new laws and they had total control of propaganda. But here's the most you need to know. By 1944, of the 4,700 newspapers published in Germany when the Nazis took over in 33, no more than 1,100 remained. Now, although half of them were still in the hands of private citizens, okay, all of them had to be published in accordance with the Ministry of Propaganda. And if you didn't, it meant your paper was done. Right? It meant your paper was done. And so we've been here before. We have seen in real time what it means to not let people express their thoughts. We have seen in real time what it means to put people into a class based upon what they believe and nothing more. You're seeing a purge in government where if you don't think like me, you're bad. You're seeing a spreading of a message. If you don't think like me, you are bad and don't deserve to be here, don't deserve to work, don't deserve to live. And so what I'm sharing with you is just one point. Open your fucking eyes, open your fucking eyes, open your fucking eyes. Because here's the deal. I would not support anything that would ever say everybody has to become a Jew or you're not worthy. I would certainly not support everybody has to become a Messianic Jew or you're not worthy. I would not support you have to become a Christian or you're not worthy. This has happened before. Did you know most of the Spanish conquistadors were Jews? You ever wonder why they were light-skinned and red curly hair and stuff? Did you know that the conquistadors, predominantly the leaders, were Jews? Do you know why? What happened then? When Isabella said you had to be Christian or die, you had, under the Great Conversio, had to accept the Christian faith in order to transact. So they came in, they seized property, they seized buildings, they seized your riches as a Jew. And the only way you could ever earn again is if you agreed to take part in the Great Conversio, which you can read in history. And the only way you could recreate the massive wealth you have if you agreed to explore for the crown, and they would arm you with ships because they knew you were a good trader or a smart person because of your business you had built previously. And they would deploy you around the world to basically go to other countries and find gold and treasures, take them, and send back the quinto, send back the royal fifth to the crown. And then you could keep the rest, right? And we're experiencing some of these things again. We're experiencing, you must think like me. You must do like me. You must be what we are. Emmanuel King says, goodness sake, that was not Christians, it was Catholics. Emmanuel, I understand what you're saying, and we'll make that correction if you want to make that correction. If you want to, the Catholics versus Christians, I understand what you're saying. I don't even use the word Christian. I use the ancient true word, which doesn't describe it into parties. It's actually people of the word. But yes, I do stand corrected. No offense meant, but that's not the point. The point was, we've been here before. This has happened before. This has come through history. And so you have to understand that if you suppress history and people are ignorant to history, then things tend to repeat themselves. That's it. This is not about whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Jew, whether you're not, whether you're a Catholic. That was not my point. My only point is, and I take a lot of shortcuts, is anytime one party basically says this is right or this is wrong and you must adopt it this way, then you tend to end up hurting and suppressing other people when it should all be about truth. And that's why when I say about scan the ballots, show us the ballots, kinematic artifacts, and vote verification, that I'm only talking about, I think that's the only unbiased way to share the truth. You know, we've been through this before with ballots, and it was called Bush versus Gore. And it was the hanging Chad thing. And I'm paraphrasing here, you don't need to correct me if I'm wrong, just paraphrasing, that call it 3 Bush observers, 3 Gore observers, and they're talking about this little dangling Chad. And one side can say, well, they meant to push it out, it just didn't break out. And the other side says, no, it's just a faulty Chad, and with these papers being rustling, it pulled out. And so that's still where human intervention comes in, human opinion. And the only thing I've done here is suggest, let's take the humans out of it. Because in this particular case, we know if a hand filled it out versus a machine filled it out. We know if it's a real ballot versus a fake ballot. We know if it's an authorized ballot versus a non-authorized ballot. We know if it's an authorized voter versus a non-authorized voter. And we know whether a machine filled it in or not, and we know whether it was mailed or not. And then let those numbers be what they are, with no regard to what the vote circle is yet, and just decide what are really real ballots. I think I still have a video on it. Let's see.
With mail-in ballots being the most contested part of this recent general election, let's take a look at the ballot as a simple piece of paper. Paper has memory. If a ballot was mailed, there will be folds throughout the paper. Physics say that once the paper is bent, it can never go back to its original shape. Our systems can detect this. While looking at the paper ballots through our systems, we're not only able to tell was the ballot actually folded and mailed, but we're also able to track, did it go through the postal system and get accounted for? While looking at these ballots, we can look closely at the votes, and we can tell whether the vote was cast by a human hand or a machine. The human hand marking the oval leaves telltale signs of human dynamics. However, if the oval was filled in by a machine, it looks totally different under computer vision examination. Besides, there should be no ballots with already filled in votes. These are just a few of the things that can be detected in the paper that is the ballot. And remember, the paper is a piece of code as well. If that paper is misprinted or misaligned, it will force the voting system to ask for adjudication. Adjudication means somebody, an administrator, takes a look at the ballot and then they decide what the voter intent was. This is a potential area of deception. In the end, everything begins with the paper ballot long before it gets into the voting machine. The paper ballot is the actual historic artifact of exactly what the voter intended to do.
And so that's why I want to explain to everybody, I'm only about the history. It is not any longer about who won the vote. You didn't hear me say, hey, go vote for this person, or hey, this. We all have our own opinions. This is no longer about anybody's opinion. This is only about absolute facts. And what are the absolute facts? The absolute fact is America needs an answer. Does your vote matter anymore? I think this system is the only way we can get an unbiased answer to what really happened. And that's why we scan in the ballot, so it's an exact forensic example, not even manipulated by a machine, and then let the chips fall where they are. You're also not hearing me say, go storm the Capitol. You've never even heard me say that, because I'm not for that. That's not what this is about. I'm for applied science, whatever it is. And basically it means as you look at these things properly and audit the historic document in a very old way, because they've always been examined optically, and is it real ink or pen or all this? It's always been done. We're just putting a high-speed process to it so we can get to an answer faster, but we take out human judgment. It is what it is. It is either folded and mailed, and there's a paper trail. It is either not folded in a spoiled ballot that was corrected, and there's a paper trail. It's either an actual legit ballot or it's not. It's either done by a human hand or it was printed in. Those are absolutes. And so all I'm trying to do for you, for our country, is find out what the exact truth is. That's it. Unbiased, no political wrangling. Whatever it is whatever it is. It is only about the truth. And I would hope everybody on both sides of the aisle would support. Let's do this for the people. Let's bring this to a close. Let's do it without fighting and squabbling. Let's just focus on, okay, let's just look at them. What was the truth? Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.